Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. A woman who says she and her sister were wrongfully convicted of murder made a strong statement during a Facebook Live today. For more, here's Brittany Guillot.
Delia Quaison spoke this morning. It was a dramatic moment.
That's what I have to say. That's my honesty. That's what I want to bring. That's what I want to say. I ask the government, I ask people, I want justice for me and my sister, and this is what I offer.
She was convicted for murdering Joe Dolph in 1994. She and her sister spent more than 25 years in prison, despite a confession by her cousin, Jason Cashane. A group of wrongful conviction advocates hosted the event today, including her lawyer, James Lockyer from Innocence Canada.
I have to put together an application to him that is convincing, that convinces him that Delia and Narissa are victims of a miscarriage of justice. I think I can do that. If it's any comfort, to date, I've always been successful.
Now, she and her sister Narissa have been incarcerated for more than 25 years. Kim Bowden is the Vice Chief of the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples. He took part in the conference today alongside Innocence Canada, Senator Kim Pate, David Milgaard, and Associate Nicole Porter. He joins us now from Saskatchewan. Kim, thanks for joining us. What can you tell us about this plea to have Odelia and Narissa released?
Well, this has been a 28-year battle. I believe that the two sisters, Odelia and Narissa, have been wrongfully found guilty of a crime that they did not commit, and we are actually calling for their immediate release. We believe that there should be steps taken where they are released back to their family, so they can begin their healing journey. 20 years is a long time. It's long enough.
Why did you get involved?
Well, and I got involved because I really felt strongly that the system was totally unjust, the justice system against Odelia and Narissa. And it speaks volumes of what happened to them. You could tell that the system, the way the court process happened at the time in 1994, the arresting officers, the RCMP that was involved, even the prosecution, it's like they were all in cahoots together to ensure that both Narissa and Odelia spent time in prison, and they didn't care at that time whether they were guilty or innocent. It didn't matter. They just wanted to make sure that they put them in jail, and they certainly got their wish.
Now, what does this case say about Indigenous incarceration overall in Canada?
You know, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I believe there's numerous Indigenous people, including women, that are presently in our federal system and including our provincial systems across Canada that really shouldn't be there. And the system is so stacked against them. A lot of times that they want to, with respect to any kind of assistance or resources, they're just not there. And when you have a colonial system, the way it's set up, it's not designed for Indigenous people at all. Actually, I believe it's designed to keep Indigenous people in prison, in jail, to ensure that, we have lawyers working and parole officers and guards and all that kind of thing. It's just a business for years and years. That's all it's been, is a business. It's for colonial governments and that to ensure that our people are incarcerated in record numbers.
So, Kim, what are the next steps?
Well, we had our meeting this morning, and we're trying to keep positive on it. And one of the things that I wasn't aware of, and I'm going to do that, is I didn't realize that we could do other advocacy work. And one of the things I'm going to do, and I'm working on a letter that's going to go to the Parole Board of Canada, Canadian Parole Board, and we're going to find out. I'm actually going to formally ask them to release both Narissa and Odelia back to their families. That's the first thing I'm going to be asking for until a review can be done in terms of what happened. And because one of the questions I also have of Lametti And the Justice Minister, the federal Justice Ministers, how long do they propose to keep them there? Like another 30 years? Really, they've actually been institutionalized far more longer than that. They've been out in the public. They're not a danger to society. Nothing like that. They should be released, and they should be both going home so they can begin their healing journey.
All right, Kim, we'll end it there. I want to thank you again for taking a few minutes to speak with us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you very much for calling.
On the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, a Mi'kmaq community's boat was unable to do their food and ceremonial harvest. These lobster traps are for Sabaganagati First Nations food, social, and ceremonial fishery. The band's boat went out to drop traps this afternoon to harvest lobster for an upcoming traditional giveaway. But community members, however, told APTN that officers for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans turned the boat back. DFO did not confirm this by airtime. An Edmonton hospital with a long history of abusing Indigenous peoples is now being scanned with ground-penetrating radar. Elders believe that there could be unmarked burial sites. APTN's Chris Stewart is on site. Chris, what is the latest?
Yesterday, ground-penetrating radar located 11 possible burial sites at the former Charles Camsell Hospital in Edmonton. From the 40s to the 60s, the original Camsell building, now demolished, and the current building from the 60s to the 90s, housed thousands of Indigenous children who were sick, mostly from tuberculosis. They were subject to experimental vaccines, reports of physical, mental, and sexual abuse. Today, those 11 sites were shown not to have any human remains. The radar picked up old construction debris like bricks. Edmonton-based Papa Chase members were on site and reacted to the development.
This section over here is the next section that has to be used for the radar. And from what we're hearing from elders passed down is that the graves are over in the southeast corner. So that's the big one.
Well, frustration, yes, in a sense of speaking, because the government knew what was going on. And, they said they don't know, but I don't believe that one bit. Because they've kept records of everything that went on. So don't tell me they don't know. They do know what went on.
More of the site still needs to be searched. There still could be remains found here. This site is part of a $1 billion lawsuit along with 28 other federally run segregated hospitals. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller is concerned provinces are rushing to lift their COVID-19 restrictions despite a surge in Delta variant cases, a choice he says could negatively impact Indigenous communities across the country. Ontario and the Territories are the only areas still enforcing restrictions on gatherings and self-isolation while traveling. The Prairie provinces, however, are all opting to lift pandemic measures, including mandatory mask mandates. The same is happening in the Maritime provinces. Quebec has greenlit outdoor festivals of 15,000 people. So overall, Minister Mark Miller is worried about some of these trends.
Very, very scary variants, including the Delta variant that has gotten into communities. Where the Delta variant is affecting people is in the unimmunized. That scares the hell out of me when it comes to communities that have very, very high youth populations and very high immunized populations.
All right, we have to take a short break, but still ahead, we'll have an update on the wildfires happening in BC. Welcome back. With the looming election, the federal government is putting their money where their mouth is. Our reporter Charlotte Moritz-Jacobs takes a look at where and what funding and funding promises are going north of 60.
A federal election could be called as early as Sunday. So it's no surprise the Liberal government is doling out dollar signs. Some highlights? To the tune of 40 million, Qikiqtarjuaq Nunavut will finally get a deep water port. And for a territory with 40% of Canada's coastline, but no public ports, it's a big deal. 15 million was also promised over the next 2 years for the design and consultation on 2 new small craft harbors in Arctic Bay and Clyde River. Meanwhile, 37 million has been earmarked for 18 road projects in the Northwest Territories. And $2.5 million for the NWT to market their seal industry.
Crazy.
Nunavut will see money to expand virtual healthcare services, while the NWT will get a boost for Aurora College's transition into a polytechnic university. Elections also allow for good photo ops, when old money is made to look like new funding. Take the $19.2 million announced to help NWT renters afford housing. Or the roughly $10 million in Nunavut for housing units in Iqaluit, Qaluktuk, and Johaven. Or the never-ending audit, study, and expansion of the Nutrition North food subsidy program. With so much cash flowing north, it's reasonable to question whether the Liberals are buying votes with taxpayers' dollars. On the other hand, without federal backing in the form of transfer payments, the territories would face serious financial strain. Regardless, the topic of debt and who foots the bill will surely be up for debate this fall. Charlotte Moritz-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A former Yukon Liberal MLA who lost her riding to an NDP candidate has also lost her challenge to have an inmate's vote declared invalid. Sarah Connors has the details.
Yukon Supreme Court has dismissed former MLA Pauline Frost's election challenge. Frost lost the riding of the Vuntut Gwich'in to NDP candidate Annie Blake during this year's territorial election on April 12th. Frost and Blake, who were the only 2 candidates for the small northernmost riding, tied with 78 votes each. A draw was held to determine the winner, and Blake's name was drawn. On April 22nd, Frost launched a petition alleging a person who voted NDP was incarcerated at the Whitehorse Correction Center. It argued his special ballot vote was invalid because he did not reside in the riding. It also asserted Elections Yukon officials did not follow the required processes to reject the inmate's vote as invalid for lack of authorized identification. In a written decision yesterday, Chief Justice Suzanne Duncan found the voter's status as a Vuntut Gwich'in citizen, as well as his desire to return to Old Crow and live there, was proof he considers the area home, and his vote is valid. She also found elections officials followed the appropriate guidelines by accepting his inter-district special ballot based on his identification. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
This week, a gathering was held on the grounds of the St. Michael's Residential School in Duck Lake, Saskatchewan. The 5-day event was held to share, connect, heal, and get feedback from survivors before any searches start for unmarked graves. APTN's Priscilla Wolf has the story.
It was a week of remembering and healing. The St. Michael's Indian Residential School in Duck Lake opened in 1894 and only closed its doors in 1996. Survivor Keith Burns from the James Smith Cree Nation attended the gathering all week. The main reason that he came was to reconnect with friends.
Mainly because I wanted to get in contact with my friends from back then. Like, I haven't seen a lot of them, and I would sure like to see them again.
Burns said that a big part of the gathering was to discuss future plans for the site and get input from survivors. He believes a healing facility would help survivors and families.
Well, they should build some kind of a healing lodge here, to help with residential school, because it just doesn't happen with us like it's it's going to go for generations.
Leo O'Mani from the Wahpeton Dakota Nation also attended St. Michael's. He came to the gathering to tell his family's story that was kept hidden for years.
I came on my own as part of my healing journey to talk about the loss of my late mom's brother who died here, who was not told about. Her parents were not told about it till months later, and we still don't know where he's buried.
O'Mani has been searching for answers for years and hopes that when the Catholic Church provides the records and they start searching this area for unmarked graves, his uncle's grave can be identified.
He's buried someplace here. I tried in 1990s to find his unmarked grave, could never find it. So I'm glad that they're going to do the scanning on this grounds, be able to find the unmarked graves, and hopefully the Catholic Church will disclose the records.
Unfortunately, many children were renamed by the church while attending residential school.
Well, we don't know what the Catholic Church named him in English, his first name and his second name, but we do know his Dakota name. You know, it's Tahowaye Chaska, means screaming hawk. He was given that name because he had such a high-pitched voice when he sang our Dakota ceremonial songs.
The gathering wrapped up with a healing walk to help survivors and descendants on their healing journey before any ground-penetrating radar starts on the St. Michael's Indian Residential School site. Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, Duck Lake, Saskatchewan.
In BC, 8 coastal First Nations and the federal government will be working together to manage community-based fisheries. It's a first-of-its-kind agreement in the province and a positive step for recognizing Indigenous rights. The Fisheries Resources Reconciliation Agreement was announced in an online press conference. It will establish joint management between Fisheries and Oceans Canada and First Nations. It will also provide funding and create jobs for participating members. Coastal First Nations President Marilyn Slett said this is true reconciliation.
Today we celebrate an important breakthrough in the relationship between the Government of Canada and Coastal First Nations. This agreement is a powerful example of what true reconciliation looks like. Reconciliation in action in this context means restoring the rights of our community members to fish for a living.
Horrific wildfires are sweeping across the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. For more on the ground there, we've reached Chief Byron Lewis of the Okanagan Indian Band. Hi, Chief Lewis. Thanks for joining us. We've been watching the fires from here in Manitoba, as I'm sure a lot of our viewers have been as well. How are your people holding up?
Well, it's hard to say. It's been a pretty trying time. We had over roughly about 1,050 of our OPIB members who have been evacuated, and that's in addition with several hundred people south of our reserve and to the north in the Falkland area. So it's putting a lot of considerable stress on the local accommodations and being able to accommodate people. So it's been quite rough. We're already going to look at local communities, our neighboring communities to the south, and there's even discussions that people with transportation may be lodged as far away as the Fraser Valley.
So what are you doing to keep these people safe?
Well, we had a couple of evacuations. We had an order that went out on Sunday at 4 o'clock, and it happened to be in the community where I live in on our reserve. And we were evacuated about 4 p.m. on Sunday. And we had another evacuation order that happened yesterday from to the north. So it's been there's been a lot of people that have left our community. We're also have a lot of non-residents that either are living in communities on leased land or on recreational leases along Okanagan Lake. So it's a considerable amount of people that we have to evacuate.
So how do these fires compare to the previous years?
Oh my God! Magnitude alone, you're looking at 32,000. 32,000 hectares and growing, and that's considerable. You're talking about well over 50,000 acres, and there's some of our reserves in the south that are 45,000 acres. So you could imagine that, say, a community like PIB or some of the other larger communities that would cover their entire reserve land base, plus an additional 5,000 acres.
Now, you touched a little bit on what's going on there currently. Are things getting worse or expected to get worse?
It's not improving, because you look at this, and we had an exceptionally dry spring where very little rainfall, and we went into the sort of unnatural occurrence that happened around June, where we had temperatures that were over 120 Fahrenheit. And that's similar to what you see coming out of, Arizona, New Mexico. And it was actually hotter in the interior than it was in some of these desert states at the high point of their summers. So we had a drying effect. It's just, it's almost like they say about the perfect storm. Well, we're in one.
All right, Chief Lewis, we'll have to leave it there. That is Chief Byron Lewis joining us.
Okay. Thank you.
We have to take one final break, but still to come, our photo of the day is next. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Métis filmmaker Matt LeMay sent us this misty morning photo at Dreamers Rock on Whitefish River First Nation near Manitoulin Island in Ontario. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, be sure to send us your photos to share@aptn.ca and include details along with your photo. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting over in the east, a mix of sun and cloud, and 27 in Charlottetown and 25 in Halifax. 21 in rain in Happy Valley Goose Bay and 24 in Cartwright. 22 in rain in Quebec City and 22 in Val d'Or. More rain and 29 in Toronto and rain and 28 in London. 25 in Edmonton, Sun and Cloud in Sioux Lookout, and 21 in Thunder Bay. 25 in sun in Churchill, and 25 in God's Lake. 29 in rain in Winnipeg, and 29 in Gimli. 30 and smoky in Regina, and 28 and smoky in Saskatoon. Rain and 22 in Buffalo Narrows, and rain and 22 in Stony Rapids. More rain over in the west, 22 in rain in Fort McMurray, and 16 in Grand Prairie. 30 in a mix of sun and cloud in Medicine Hat, and 25 in Calgary. Rain and 19 degrees in Vancouver, and 20 in rain in Quesnel. Rain and 19 in Dease Lake, and more rain in Smithers, and 17. 8 degrees in rain in Rock River, and 22 in Beaver Creek. 16 in rain in Wrigley, and 19 in Yellowknife. 8 degrees in Colville Lake with rain, and 10 degrees in. Thursday night was the first Canadian Football League game in over 600 days between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The 2020 CFL season was cancelled due to the pandemic. Before the game, the Métis Nation and Treaty 1 flags were raised inside Investors Group Field in Winnipeg for the very first time at a Bombers game. This season, the Bombers organization will be raising awareness of the residential school system. Just shy of 30,000 fans were in attendance for the first time since the Grey Cup in November of 2019 between Hamilton and Winnipeg. The flag raising is a visible reminder acknowledging where the stadium is located.
I feel very proud, and once I see that flag going up, it's going to be proud right here, because right here where we're standing, this is the heartland of the Métis Nation. As you know, the Métis people brought Manitoba into the Confederation.
I gotta say, I miss the Canadian Football League, and it's great to see the Métis and Treaty 1 Nation flags flying at the stadium. That's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. I'm Daryl Stranger. Have a great night.